Hey, what is up, guys? Juan here. Um, I'm 26 years old, living in the US. I just wanted to give my perspective and opinions on why it's exhausting to live in the US as a Gen Z adult. If you're wondering, I'm on a walk right now. I've been on a fitness journey for a while now. I've lost like 10 pounds, and I walk here all the time at the park. So I was wondering, you know what, why not just start a vlog and just, um, talk about things, talk about bullshit. And yeah, so, if you're also into your fitness journey, let me know. How many pounds have you lost? Or if you have any PRs. But anyways, let's get into it. Growing up here in America, you thought if you worked hard enough, you'd have a stable life. If you study hard, go to college, you'll get a good job. And eventually you'll be able to buy a good house and then start a family. But now that I'm actually an adult, it feels like survival is the only opportunity you have. Everyone's burned out, and somehow people with like good jobs still they feel stuck and not comfortable. And I've been spending more time in Mexico lately, and honestly, it made me realize how unhappy a lot of the people are here in the US. So I started asking myself, like, is it really worth to live in the US right now when I could just move to Mexico with my parents? Here's a little information about that is, my parents have a house in Mexico, and we go there often, and it's beautiful, life is amazing, and it's just different over there compared to here. So that made me ask myself, does the US actually suck for Gen Z? Yes, it does. I'm not saying the US doesn't have any opportunities, and I'm not saying it's the worst country in the world, but it's definitely not the best country. I think a lot of Gen Z people grew up expecting, this version of adulthood with stability, and instead we just got hit with a completely different reality. It's just survival. And this is just my experience and what I've noticed from people around me. You don't have to take everything as the Bible. I'm just, talking about my perspective and other people's perspectives. What I wanted to talk about mainly is how everything is so goddamn expensive. The cost of living is so high, and it feels like everything became expensive all at once. Housing is so bad. A one-bedroom apartment can be like $2,000. That's like half a person's monthly check right there. Or if you're bi-weekly, that's like your first check and a little bit of your second check. And how are people supposed to live off that? All of my friends are living with their parents. And if you are living in your own apartment, you are most likely not living alone. You're living with probably another person because rent is insane. Like, seriously, who isn't living with their parents right now? Second is food. Food's been going up. You go to like the store and then you buy 5 things and suddenly it's $100. Eating out is expensive too. You go out for 2 and suddenly it's $100. Insurance is a scam. You pay for health insurance and then you get sick and then you file a claim and then they deny your claim and then you die. Car insurance is also a scam. It gets super expensive if you want full coverage. Even buying a car, nowadays, if you want a car, it's like, what, $25,000-$30,000? No. And if it's a truck, $80,000? Ha, yeah, right. I own a 1991 Honda Accord EX 2-door coupe, I believe that's what it's called. And I paid like $6,000 for it, and I fixed it up for around $2,000. and it's working just fine. And the insurance on that is about $121 or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but around that price range. And yeah, I just can't imagine having a car payment for a $20,000 car. Now for me, fortunately, I have a remote job and I live with my parents. And I don't have to deal with commuting. So the gas prices aren't affecting me, but I've seen how gases have gone up and it's a lot of money, man. You know, on Instagram, people post the gas prices and they're just like, it's insane, you know. I just can't believe people are, you know, somehow surviving. Going back to what I said with living with my parents, I feel like, you know, Gen Z was robbed of, you know, the adult experience of living by yourself and figuring things out, because we can't live by ourselves. If you don't want to live with your parents, you're gonna have to live with someone else anyways, because you can't afford, you know, an apartment by yourself, which is absolutely insane. I feel like because we never experienced that, we're kind of stunted a little bit. We kind of aren't truly adults, because I don't know if it's you, but with me, when I'm with my parents, sometimes I feel like a kid. Sometimes I feel like they can treat you like a kid. Not all the time, but you know, I'm not saying it's bad to live with your parents. You know, a lot of people do it. There's a lot of like multi-generational homes or multi-generations living inside a home, and that's fine. That's, you know, there's a lot of cultures that do that. I'm Mexican, they do that. But still, I wanted a taste of that freedom of having my own apartment. But you know, I'm never gonna be able to achieve that because I'm not gonna rent a $2,000 apartment. Now, another point that I wanted to talk about is, you know, work culture and how it can be draining for many people. People are exhausted. You know, a lot of people spend most of their energy just trying not to burn out. They have long hours at work. It's super stressful, and they don't even have a lot of vacation time. And you know, after work, you're too tired to do anything. And let's say you do take vacation. Well, because your work is always like packed, you're stressed out at vacation because you're like, oh shit, there's gonna be a lot of work when I come back, because some people are incompetent and they can't do their jobs. I feel for you, man. Or you're the only person who's doing that job at work. Or there's not enough staff, you know? It's always something like that, always some bullshit. You know, I feel like a lot of Gen Z, we grew up seeing our parents work nonstop, and we saw how that took a toll on their mental and physical health. And it, you know, it has us questioning whether we want that too. You know, we don't want that, and we try to avoid that, but it's not the reality of our situation. I also wanted to talk about, I guess, you know, how living in the US can feel isolating. Something I noticed after spending time in Mexico is how isolated life can feel here. Here, everything revolves around driving. You need to own a car if you want to do anything. If you want to get groceries, or if you want to go somewhere, or if you want to hang out with your friend who lives like 10 minutes away by drive, yeah, it's not going to happen if you don't have a car. And I feel like this makes everyone feel disconnected, and you know, it makes people stay inside. Because first of all, if you have a car, you're gonna spend gas, and you don't want to spend gas, or you don't want to buy a car for $30,000, but you don't want to pay insurances. So I feel like people aren't even getting their licenses. My little sister, she's about to turn 16 or 17. She doesn't have a license, and I don't think she's planning on getting one. I'm just saying, a lot of younger Gen Z don't want licenses, and I feel like that really disconnects people. In Mexico, you know, it's different. People take buses and taxis, or they go to like some common area where there's a bunch of like buses. I don't know what they're called, like bus stops. I'm dumb. Of course they're called bus stops. Yeah, they go to bus stops or they get private taxis or whatever. And, it feels more alive because there's always people walking there, there's people talking. It feels lively. People are outside. People, and there's like an actual community. And, people, they even walk to their, to the little stores outside, or they walk to wherever they're going because, it's not car dependent. I'm not saying Mexico has it perfect. They have their own problems too. But I feel like when you're there, it feels more human. Here in the US, it feels very soulless, corporate, and just catering towards billionaires. I also wanted to point out that, social media completely changed how Gen Z experiences adulthood, because people constantly compare themselves to what people post on social media. I fall victim to that too, because you see someone traveling the world, or you see someone who bought a house, or you see someone start a business, a successful business, or someone's making like $200,000 coding for Microsoft. Surprised they're not laid off, but kudos to them. And while you see that, many people are struggling and stressed trying to pay bills. The normal average person is doing that, and it creates this feeling that you're behind in life, even when you're actually doing pretty okay. Boomers had it a lot easier than us, let's be honest. They could literally deliver milk as a job, and they were able to afford, to pay for their house and for their families. I honestly think that, Gen Z, a lot of us just want to like chill, and we want to have more free time. We want to have lower stress. We want to have like community, affordable living, flexibility, and basically a walkable city. Instead of whatever the US tries to feed us, like, hey, work for the rest of your life and try to chase that maybe promotion that will maybe give to you, which they're not going to give to you. I feel like that's why social media is a big hit, and like remote work is really big, and like contract work, and like moving abroad while doing all that, because you get to live life on your own terms, and you're not, waiting for a promotion, or you're not following hours set by a company. So yeah, I feel like that's why a lot of people also compare themselves online. So yeah, I'm not saying that the US is terrible, because there are opportunities, I guess, that a lot of countries don't have. But I do feel like this whole country feels broken for a lot of young people, and that, I know there's going to be a guy in the comment section being like, why are you complaining, blah blah blah, you guys are lazy. We're not lazy. Gen Z, it's not like we hate work. We want to work. We want to contribute to our society. We just don't want to, what's it called? Work to survive. You get me? Life shouldn't just be about, how am I gonna pay rent next month? Or, oh dude, I can't go out because I only have like $100 in my bank account. I can't do this, I can't do that. That's not what we want. We want to work, but we want to be paid fairly, and we want flexibility, and we want like to live on our own terms, I guess. I don't know, that's just what I think. I'm curious about what you guys think, and let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my points down below in the comment section. But yeah, I'm just a guy rambling and talking gibberish and stuff. But let me know what you think. Does America actually suck for Gen Z, or are we all just sick of it and burned out? See ya.